So before I begin, many thanks to Maria for inviting us to take part, and to the GDS as a whole for setting up an event series like this, a free event series as well. That's fantastic. I'm Anna Kinneir, and I'm going to give you a little bit of context about me. I'm approaching nearly one whole decade working in the creative industries, which compared to Paul is a fraction. Right now, my day and night job is working to bring to life Makeversity Amsterdam. Originating in Somerset House in London 4 years ago, Makeversity does three things. We provide affordable city-centric co-making spaces for professional makers. We run learning initiatives for all ages, but focusing on the disadvantaged youth and the underemployed. And we also provide services for clients, so hackathons, makeathons, research, etc. Some of our amazing professional maker members include AV, who from October the 18th you'll be able to see in London Design Museum as part of Designs of the Year. They make drones for humanitarian purposes. This is a rescue relief drone for refugees at sea. Also, it can capture poachers who are poaching rhinos, reverse there. Men's Studio fashion designers recently awarded a fashion award in Amsterdam. Frank Kolkman also just won Systems Services Dutch Design Awards, and Moku Mono, bike designers about half my age probably, and have just won Eurobike Gold Awards. So some fantastic members working for Makeversity Amsterdam. So that's my work life. The other side is that it's a real shame. My brother, who's a co-founder, Jock Kinneir Library, he is a researcher, a graphic designer, a type designer, a product designer. He can't be here, he's in China working for 2 weeks. But together we've begun to start to research and develop the Jock Kinneir Library with guidance obviously from Margaret Calvert, who sadly also can't be here tonight. She is a little busy at the moment. She's just won the Lifetime Achievement Medal. So she's got other things going on. Thanks to London Design Festival for that. So this is our grandfather, Jock Kinneir, and he's a pretty stylish guy. Here with us I feel fortunate enough that we've got his son as well, my father, an industrial designer who inherited Jock's intriguing food combinations like Marmite and cake. And his daughter-in-law, Lizzie, who patiently sat and typewrote up all of Jock's unpublished novel. Potentially that's some content to come on the site in the future, who knows. So Jock Kinneir Library has begun as a passion project in that small amount of time I have alongside Makeversity. The web is being designed by a fantastic studio called SBPH, I just want to call out and say thanks to. And the biggest question everyone's asking us, including Margaret, is why have we started this hefty research project? There are some reasonable resources already online. There are books that he has written, that other people have written. His work is in the Design Museum, and of course, if you walk onto the streets, you see one of their most famous projects. Well, the reason for it is that on his centenary, we wanted to launch something that was more focused, an open, creative, and academic platform that explores Jock's teaching and his discourse as opposed to just his design practice. So his briefs, his workshops, the talks that he gave, and also going deeper into his book. It's our intention to place Jock's teaching and design thinking among a contemporary audience of designers. I think that's pretty much you are our audience. To consider his people-centered priorities. What if he was still teaching today? Would it still be relevant? So it's a way to explore more about the person behind the signs as well, and also to understand his work in nurturing what was then the next generation of designers, which includes obviously the incredible Margaret. So hopefully, as we begin to develop this, it'll be something that you guys will all use in your practice. Potentially not day to day, we're not sure how much content we're actually going to manage to source, but maybe occasionally you'll dive in and say, hey, yeah, that's a really interesting piece I want to take forward. So here, under the banner of Design for Public Sector, we naturally are always referring to the design practice of both Jock and Margaret and their office. This collaborative practice between the two of them formed his thinking, and also the quotes that we're going to share with you and the images as well, and it's mostly of the work of Kinneir Calvert Associates. So to give you a little bit of background of the kind of work that we're going to be showcasing on the site and also bringing to the audiences is, for instance, this is a client project. This is a 1958 commission from P&O ferries, back when that was the main form of transport, to design a system of luggage labels. And what I find so amazing is that they're completely contemporary today. It wasn't that long ago that someone recently did the luggage labels that had very, very similar designs. So it's quite exciting to see that the language is still existing today. And that was 1958. In 1964, Jock Kinneir was teaching at Royal College of Art, and our researchers led us to come across briefs that he set to his students, which is fantastic that us launching this site has made us come across all of this amazing information. And this is a brief that concerns luggage labelling for an international railway journey. So someone leaving one location and then having a connecting railway journey to another location. So that's the brief, but what's most exciting is that now, because of Jock Kinneir Library, we can see what his students responded with, so how they responded to the call. So this is Richard Doust, one of his students. This is his work on the project, as he was taught by Jock. But then it gets even stranger. So we've launched this call to action and asked people to help us find more documentation like this, to see what his students were producing, see what he was talking to them about. And then, so we launched this online portal and we made this call to action, and then suddenly this guy named Andrew from the Scottish Borders gets in touch. He drops us his email and he says, I've got this tiny but beautiful portrait that's been painted on bone and it says R.J. Kinneir on it. Is it relevant to you? So we're thinking, well, this is really strange. We've never seen, we don't think it's done by him. It's tiny, as you can see, very bizarre. Anyway, so we set Ross on the mission of undercover detective to find out where it's from, and we've received it now. We've got it in our possession, and it's of a lady called Mrs. Stamp. It's from 1935, while Jock was at Tonbridge School when he was just 18. And we've got no idea who she is or why he painted her on a piece of bone. But, so we've gone from things like this about our grandfather to things like this, which is, you know, who knows what is going to open up in the future when we keep on doing our research. So while online, we've launched 3 pieces of content so far. It's not much. So we've got a piece about a workshop student who is heavily influenced by Jock. We've got a junior designer's perspective, and also we've got a lecture given, one of his lectures that was given by Jock while at the while visiting the MoMA. Behind the scenes, we're working away gathering more research to share, and we want to share in a way that's useful and engaging for those practicing and learning today. Of course, there will be obviously a bit of snacky content as well. We're aiming to get a lot of lovely visual bites for you guys to all use and right-click save. So the day before Valentine's Day this year, so February the 13th, we received this email. And just to kind of caveat this, when we launched a call to action to say, has anyone ever been taught by Jock? Has anyone got any information? Do they know anyone who might have been his client, etc.? We had no idea whether we'd uncover any storytelling, let alone any storytelling like this. Most of Jock's direct peers, unfortunately, have also passed away. Sadly, as well, as things move into a digital age and you have these huge maquettes of motorway signs, a lot of them have been put in skips. So we were already kind of realising that actually the content that we're going to have is probably going to be pretty minimal, so we've got to do a huge job in researching and analysing how we can actually make it relevant to you guys. But let me put this email into context. So the most interesting bit I've put in bold there. So in about 1974, I interviewed my hero Jock Kinneir for a then new Dutch design magazine about deform. I may have some slides from that period. So this is very early on in our start, and we're starting to get really exciting, like, this is amazing. There's someone who's emailed us. Not only have they interviewed him, they're inspired by him, they're working contemporary practice. And that was Paul. So Paul had come across the site through his archivist. Now, just to give you context, this is Amsterdam, and this is where Makersity Amsterdam is based. That's where I am day to day. And this is where Paul is based. That's a 10-minute walk. So already the fact that there's someone round the corner from us who we would never in entirety of existence ever found you in any other way than through us launching this online site. And Paul is, as you were saying earlier, you're probably one of the people living today who knows Jock's work and has influenced him and uses his work in contemporary practice today. So it's a very, very unique experience to be able to speak from the position of not being a designer, so to speak, but being a relative of Jock's, and to be able to hear someone who's actually using and inspired by his work in their extremely important and world-reaching contemporary practice. So I raced over there around the corner for a day with Paul, and we dove into his archives, which were immaculately kept by his wife Ellen, and everything is ordered, do not mess up the order. And it's very much primary and secondary research, which makes it even more exciting for us. So our unique relationship, we felt, demanded a unique presentation format, hence why we're doing a kind of joint presentation. So the way we're going to do it is we've got about 4 ideas or things that we've seen so far in the research we've done about Jock that we're going to bring to the table, and Paul's going to show how, partly how these have influenced the design, but also how he's taken it further, and also a few more chapters as well. And Paul uses this really great phrase I like, which is called, we're going to look under the hood, or we're going to look in the kitchen. So there are Mijksenaar slides here that have never been seen before from client presentations, so you're going to get a really good insight. Over to Paul.
Okay. And I have a new premiere of a new quotation by Jock. You don't know.
Okay.
I will show it later. Can I have the remote? Yeah, thank you. Okay. First, a short introduction about Jock's works. Sorry. And then a little something about mine work, and then I go to Under the Hood. So you all know these, of course, even if you don't know Jock and you're living in England, you're driving a motorway, you will know them. And amazingly, what attracted me when I was 18 years and heard about Jock, and I read an article in the Design magazine, which now vanished. That was the Design magazine of the Design Center on Haymarket. Who knows that? Well, I do. I have been there several times, and every time. So that's where I learned Jock's work when the War Boys Committee published the first report in 1963, and that's how it started. And then gradually the manuals were published, Traffic Sign Manual number 1, etc. And every time it was not, they were not all published at once. So it was first volume 1 and 2. And every time I had to go to London to Her Majesty's Stationery Office in High Holborn, I know the route by my heart, I was stupefied that it doesn't longer exist, that beautiful shop. And it's all digital, of course. But so I slowly I collected the whole manual, and it's now all donated back to Jock Kinneir's family, so to say. So we're very happy because my wife and I, we really had no idea what to do with it. And our biggest part of our collection, maps, and so it's all gone to the University Library of Amsterdam. That would be great either, but nobody will ever look in Amsterdam to Jock Kinneir's work, even if they heard about it. But now in Jock Kinneir's library, that's the best position where you can donate things. So you know it all, it's all brilliant, all bright. I don't want to talk especially about Jock's work. I can do that, that's not the issue. This is the traffic signs where Margaret Calvert was involved. This is a page of the manual of the book. She just told a story about the school children running for a school traffic warning sign, and she told in the newspaper that the girl is portraited after her, so she portraited herself. It's all from our library, but still in Amsterdam now. Okay, so we do large infrastructure. So when I was 18, I was sure wayfinding was my thing. I never thought about anything else. So that's strange, of course, when you were 18, and it was all new in that time. Now there are much more wayfinding consultancies, because sometimes we lose a pitch. Before we never lose pitches, we were the only one. And now we are losing pitches. And there are a lot of London offices, agencies, but that's life. But there's too much work. If all the airports of the world take care of wayfinding We need thousands and thousands of designers. So we have time, we have work enough for everybody. So Amsterdam Airport, we work for them for almost 30 years continuously. As a side spin-off, that's a New York airport owned by the Port Authority, and a spin-off of the American signs are the Abu Dhabi signs, as you can see. And the familiarity, it's always a difficult word, that's on purpose, because we think about the users. It would be nice if you travel from New York, or from Amsterdam to New York, you will recognize the sign, at least the coding, etc. That helps your experience. And if you go to Abu Dhabi, you will see it again. So we try to form our own standardization, our own international standard. The clients don't do it. They are not interested in standardization, but we are, from the design, user point of view. Oh, you have to look here. The Dutch railways, the pictograms are the German, designed by the International Railway Organization. They designed the pictograms. We added them on. But I don't go into the detail of the project itself. And you see here, the signage is just a part of a family of furniture of stations. You see the whole, we did only the signs, but here you see the complete collection of furniture in a railway station. And it should be part of that family. IKEA, we just finished. It's now rolling out of 360 stores in the world. And we introduced the two-way traffic. Before you only got one way, from the entrance, the showroom, and then the magazine, and then the deposit, or how you depot it's called. And then you went out. You never could return. You never find your way back. And we returned. And we learned that in the European countries, England, Holland, Belgium, and so, that the men refuse to go to IKEA with their wives. In China, you don't have that problem. The whole family goes. But in Europe, the men resisted to go to IKEA. They hated it. They never could find anything. They only have to make the whole walk to see it all. And now we introduced the go and back system. Okay, that was my work. So now we have kind of division of categories of subjects, and we interfere with Jock's ideas behind. I'm starting an Instagram account, and I published this jacket. And because I found an interview with Margaret Calvert, why are the signs, at least the second category, why are they green? And Margaret Calvert tells that because, I have to read it, the chairman of the Arts Commission, Sir Hugh Casson, he liked green, and green as dark as old dinner jackets. And that's why it's green. I've never seen a green dinner jacket, because it's typical English, I guess. And why is an old dinner jacket? I have no idea what it has to do with road signs, but that was his idea. So you learn something. Okay.
Okay. So this is when it starts becoming a bit of a back and forward, a face-to-face. So the first topic that we brought up that we felt was important was politics. Obviously we're in the GDS building as well. And interestingly, thank you. Interestingly, in two of Jock's talks, this is kind of the first thing that he states as being an issue for designers, especially at this scale of work. So a quote from him, I won't read the whole thing, but the bit that's important for us is, first you have to catch your politician or civil servant. If he thinks that a design programme will show such benefits, he will back it. But you need pressure to get action and a trigger to set it in motion. And the talk that he gave for NATO was called The Practical and Graphic Problems of Road Design. And there's a lot of his thoughts in all of this. Basically, anything regarding speaking about a civil servant or a committee or setting up a team, it was always bringing in the designer from a very, very first moment. As soon as the designer was brought in too late, he felt there were issues. Decisions were made over dinner tables without the designer being present. So he wanted to focus on teamwork, including the design from the beginning, to help write a better brief, to develop a relevant steering committee, and to better understand the design process. Interestingly, on the motorway signs, actually in turn that then helped the purse strings that we just mentioned, because the design team actually, by being involved from an early stage, managed to make a saving of 15% on a material used in motorway signs, which is a cost saving. So already you're starting to see benefits from the designer being involved early on. And that takes us on to your process.
Okay. This slide I especially drew for you. It never existed before, but because talking about government, designer involved experts about infrastructures, what would I know about infrastructure? And of course I'm not, as a wayfinding designer, you don't have to be an expert on railways or on aircraft or something, or hospital. The problem is always the same. So what I try to sketch in this scheme, and then after it we highlight parts of it. So we start with the management, let's say the client who owns the airport, railways, whatever, and they have a steering committee, I guess, and they also are responsibilities for all the approvals to be made. Then the second stage is the design specifications they have to put together. The client cannot do that because he's not an expert. He needs experts to help him to create the specs. So this part can be research, of course, the benchmarking to see what they like, what they want, what they want to achieve. And you see, every time there is a compass drawn, that means there is a designer influence, and there's a designer needed, required. So it doesn't mean that it's the same designer all the time, but it's only the phase of the process where you need the input of design. Then you have the design team is created based on the specs and on the project definition. So there's a group formed, and there's a design group. There's a design group and design team, and it's very important. And you see that on Jock Kinneir's, the designer should be on board, not as an outside consultant which you meet at the bus stop on your way home, as Jock did. But it's important that he's a member of the team with a vote. Then you have the preliminary design. You need to research prototyping. So, for example, legibility is part of the research. What kind of typeface, the type size, the spacing, etc., etc. So that's prototyping. It's not a real model, it's not a design, but just testing out what typeface is the best, etc. Then you get then you have a preliminary design, and then you get a peer review. That's how it's called in America. I don't know. It's called here. I've been a member of peer review several times, and it's economy. Can it be cheaper? That's the first goal they get from the client. Can it be cheaper? Is the quality satisfying? Can there be alternatives? Maybe another way of thinking. Did we call it tunnel vision. You have to avoid that people think in one way only. So have they brought up alternatives? And of course, I forgot the approval from the board, from the steering committee for the preliminary design. Then we go to the final design. Of course, design is involved, and sketching, coloring, pictograms, the artistic part of it is performed in that stage. And we see here Jock Kinneir, and that's the time of, we call it mock-up, real-size models of the final product, which you can test on the road, just to have to see the feel and look. Because the typeface is already tested, the spacing, but just you have to see the real thing once. And mostly we call it mock-ups because sometimes they make just in wood or something, doesn't matter. And here you see a nice photo of Jock looking to the work, with the work. Then we get the execution, of course, the builders, manufacturers, and it's very important that during that period no changes are allowed. No last minutes thinkings come into the process. The process has to be finished in this stage. And if you have a real reason to change anything from the client, from anyone, you only can do it when the process of the result is finished, and then you start another project for the changes. That's very important. We do that at Schiphol all the time. Otherwise, during the execution, that takes months or a year, you get all people, oh, we want to change this. You cannot have that. Then project will run out of budget, run out of time, and run out of quality. So then we have the project result, and this is the moment I want to show you. We developed some tools at our office. Some of them are still in progress, a work in progress, some of them already working. We have the spatial zoning method that we'll come into in some minutes. We have the wayfinding evaluator, that's what you take with you when you go survey and you take measure. You can see, you want to see where the science or whatever the architecture should be taken care in. That's we call it. It's a portable thing which you take with you when you are on a survey. Then you have the sign generator. That's the 90% layout according to a template. You just type in the text, or the text is already come from database, and then the generator makes the layout of the signs. It's not 100%, but at least it's the big bulk of signs like restrooms or something, or exit, which are repeating maybe 100 or 1,000 times.
I'm going to quickly jump in.
Yes.
What's quite interesting about that is that's almost exactly identical to the way that Jock and Margaret organised the motorway signage system as well. They created a grid and they created a system where actually any contractor could put together the signs themselves. They wouldn't need to, they wouldn't need to design it themselves, because you don't want a contractor in the middle of England designing up a road sign. You want them to just be able to put together the parts and know that actually it fits the system. So it's a very, very important part of the process, and it's exciting to see that actually it works still contemporary.
Yeah, I shouldn't have put it back, but then I have to do the whole animation again. Sorry for that. There's no shortcut for that. Okay, that's where we end. Next one. Ah, that's you again.
Ah, yes, okay. The dance. So technical research, we've touched on this a little bit already with the experimentation and the prototyping. So the quote that we wanted to pull out from Jock and how this is relevant is one that we dug deep for. It's not necessarily the first one that you'd choose relevant to technical research, but so Paul's already chatted about the prototyping side of things. We used this image. This is one of the live prototypes back in the day that they used for the motorway signage. But what happened after that was quite interesting. Once they'd done tests, is that Jock then actually noticed that there was relevance to, for instance, pointillist painting and how that affected viewing distances as well, and how you had to then use a wider spacing in text. So it's kind of this idea of primary and secondary research. Some things are measurable, and they use parameters, sometimes working in your favour, sometimes not. And it's how you balance those intrepid steps with an ever-tightening capacity for just a very, very simple delivery like that we said for the contractors. And here are some of the maquettes that are currently up in St. Bride's Library.
Yep. Well, this is a system for designing in a spiral way, and I have no idea. I don't think I have invented it, but I was teaching in Delft University for 15 years, and it will be past my path. And the idea is that you do the same steps twice, then you enrich your prior ordeal, and you can improve your quality, and you can repair mistakes. So you have. Oh, I see the slide here already so that's confusing. Okay, so there are 4 stages in the design process: analysis, concept, design, and test, and then you have the result. So, and the spiral means first, so that's the first step, second step, third step, fourth step, and then you go again. You do it once again. A little analysis, a little concept, some design work, and some testing. Then to be sure. In fact, it's kind of double checking with the opportunity to interfere. Okay. You again.
It's fun, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good.
So the third topic, and then there's a big chunk of Paul when we go on to the fourth one, is kind of the personal, holistic thinking and public will. So this is similar to the idea of material saving that we mentioned earlier, but it's also about consistency. And one of the things that Jock did, and one of the things he enjoyed doing, was, for instance, removing things that were unnecessary or he felt were unnecessary, whether from a research perspective or a personal perspective. So, for instance, with fractions, so 2/3, or with arrowheads, They had both a technical reason for removal, but also a personal preference reason for removal. So with the arrowhead, they were removed actually because when bright lights were shining at them, the glare of having the arrowhead would actually obstruct the vision of the driver. So there was too much glare from the reflective material on the green. And with the 2/3, it was slightly more personal. But with both of them, the idea was that consistency in design is the visual equivalent of grammar and language. So when he referred to the removing of the arrowheads, it was seeing these appendages go was like taking a stone out of one's shoe. So there's something quite satisfying about that. So to give you an example, something that you've probably seen before, removing the slash, thank you, from fractions.
Brilliant. Okay. You see, when there's a green slide, that means the old dinner jacket, then comes Anna. Okay. Also from the taking the public serious, that's one of our principles as information designers. That's what we are. That wayfinding always should be seen from the user point of view, and that doesn't mean the client's point of view. And of course, that sometimes it collapses because the client has some other interests than the user, even if he works for the user. That's a strange anticlimax, but we have to fight something for the interests of the users. And so we created the passenger journey, and we do it for all kind of applications like airports, arrivals, departures, hospitals, and this is just an example for an airport. So we see the passenger journey, that's in an X, you see it here in the yellow. That's how the people perceive it. Then we show here what kind of means of information you need, and then we can add all kind of elements what you need during that process. And it's very helpful also for the client and for the future passenger or user to see if it fulfills his demands. And slowly you build a kind of system that you can use for several occasions. You don't have to do it all over again. It's very helpful and it makes the process visible. Oops. Okay. We made for a special occasion how does a passenger journey looks like in 2020 when security is more tight than even. So we made this little movie just for the future, for security point of view. And there's sound. I hope it goes. Well, it's also promotional, you can see that. But the fun part is that so the security is take place during your preparation, during going to the airport, and not all the security what you have now. And that will maybe the future. That you are scanned or whatever while you drive or while you walk or whatever. One of the main tools is that we analyze the flows, and that costs a lot of work. It's the most time taking part of the work to analyze the flow of in a hospital or railway, etc. And I'll show you several examples from what we did. This is from this is LaGuardia. It is only the parking thing. And what is interesting is we say sometimes, for example, here you see what is if this parking terrain is full, use P6, and so it goes on. So, but at the end, all parkings will be full, and then what? And most information system, wayfinding system, they end there. So they end nowhere. So the last parking is full, so what? And you're standing there, and what to do? So you always have to take care what happens if, and you have to find a solution, and you cannot have loose ends in wayfinding. This is the new Fulton Street Transit Center. I worked for some time in New York with our partner Arup, and it's interesting because it combines different former stations into one, and it means you have 5 stations and 35 exits. So it's very difficult to find your right exit, because if you want to exit here near the World Trade Center and you end instead on this way, you are in trouble. It makes 20 minutes on the walk. You have to go back or something. So we have to think about the problem. What exists in that time, not at the normal New York subway, because it was much easier. So this is just by flowchart. We try, do we have to give names, do we have to numbers, etc. Here you see we concentrated some exits in an area. So you go to the Broadway area, and in the Broadway area you find the different exits in that particular area. But of course you have to know that you have to be in the Broadway area, for example, for Cortlandt Street West. So we thought, we gave them numbers. And this is off the record, but let it go. I presented it for the New York subway. And there was the head of the sign department, design, I don't even have the proper name. He was an angry guy, he didn't want to hear anything. But on request of the architects, I collected examples from all the places in the world where you have exit signs. Hong Kong, Peking, Paris, London. He said, this is New York, fuck London. Now you can hear Trump already a little. Trump didn't exist. I was shocked in a meeting of 50 people, official people from the Metropolitan Transport Authority. Fuck London. So now you know where you stand. It was a brilliant idea, and still. Now I use Instagram to leave out all my frustrations. You can find it in one of my posts. Okay, this is a flowchart from Frankfurt Airport, only for departures. And now, by experience, we know when we created this flow, we can see already visual that the airport is not structurized well. We can see, for example, you can see some loops that are not visible here, but we can see this is a nightmare for passengers that they have to follow, because this flow means information, means signs. You have to make choices. They're all little decision points. And you can see already that the amount of decision you have to make at Frankfurt Airport is awful. And so we solved that. And then we presented it. And then we told them it cost, I had calculated, it was, I think, 18 million euro to install it in Frankfurt Airport. Then Lufthansa was that in troubles, and they have to pay half of it, and they didn't want to pay. So it's still a nightmare there. But interesting is that this is a tool, the flowchart helps you as a designer. Then you see the problem on visual. You have, of course, you need experience to see the problem, but we can see it already when we see this flowchart. Here is a problem. So I visualize this on a different way, more easy to read. And every color means a different kind of process, which is named in the process. So you have light blue, dark blue, purple, etc. And they all are different parts in the process, and they're named, so you have to understand them. So what we did is we simplified it. So you have mainly 2 categories: ground transportation, departures, yellow, And arrivals. Transfer we leave out because there's no way, because the people who are transferring, they're just going looking for a new gate. So at the end, so what they do is they return in the process and become departing passengers. So the whole transfer, the connecting center, that's all rubbish. There are some airports in some international situations that you need transfer. But basically, transfer is nothing. You want to go to a destination, and you have to change airports, but that doesn't mean that you have to go on the whole process. You just re-enter the process. And then you see the black elements, they're just things which you pass by. You pass by customs, you pass by immigration. You don't have to sign you have to tell, you know, you arrive at immigration, but you don't have to tell, go to customs, go to immigration. You will pass that anyway. So leave it out of your system. It creates visual pollution. And of course, at a certain moment, you have to draw the lines of all the flows, the main categories of passengers, and then you have in real maps, architecture provides, and then you have the decision points, they are the blue dots, and then you have to see how the decision points maybe are to close and what information, then the real design work comes. You really have to puzzle how you solve this problem. Okay, very important is nomenclature, the naming, and of course the same thing here. We try to use the same nomenclature for every airport as our client. Sometimes it doesn't work, but in Europe we went quite far. And the funny thing that I'm a Dutch guy, I was in that time a little younger, but I wrote a nomenclature for the New York airports just in our studio by Aero. That feels great. And then afterwards you're walking in the village to have some nice dinner, and then that feels great. I can say that you're writing the manual for the New York Railways as a Dutch guy. That gives a lot of pleasure. But it makes sense because shuttle bus, they call it courtesy fence class 3. That means hotel shuttle. So say hotel shuttle, things like that. I get a warning, but I have to hurry up, I'm not even halfway. So we improved that. We say maximum 3 steps in decision making. Choose the terminal, go to check-in, go to gates. Arriving, go to baggage, go to arrival. That's it. No more steps than 3. That's the maximum. Then you have to, that's a more detailed nomenclature of Paris airport. And you have to remove. Don't have names which are related to buildings, because buildings change, buildings expand, buildings are demolished. So creates only zoning what is related to the activity, what is going on, to the process. And these are endless series of sheets to show how badly Terminal 2 of Charles de Gaulle is one of the worst airports in the world. Don't change in Paris from London to South Africa or whatever. You will miss your change or you will lose your luggage anyway. And we have seen it every time. And we proved that it was wrong on this kind of diagrams, and they were endless. But they didn't say fuck London. But they said we are French, and that's even worse. So nothing happened here. Okay. Well, I think this is a funny thing. So you know this picture? It's famous. It's from Scientific American in a special edition written by Gombrich, and this is a marvelous cartoon that visuals, pictograms. The girl shows a flower. You can see that, but everyone thinks have a different idea. And the boys think about aircraft, of course. The girls about animals. And so there's also a kind of gender thing here. What I noticed. But pictograms has a certain power, but also a very big weakness. And the worst thing is when you ask graphic designers to design pictograms for a hospital. Well, here's something zipping your breast. And it's always like that, especially the brain thing. They come up with maze and question marks and so you see for yourself, it's crazy. Because, and the clue is here, because pictograms only work when it's related to something what people know. If you never have seen a liver, you cannot see the symbol for a liver, you don't understand it. So that's the problem here. So we said, so that's what I don't go into that, but I just showed you the things what people have from abroad. They think, oh, and color coding, symbols, that solves the problem, but that doesn't. And what we do is we try to standardize the pictograms as much as possible. These are some of our clients, and we look how we did in other airports, and we try to convince them to harmonize these things. But we have to do it by ourselves. So I think, oh, that's a new one from Jock. I just found it somewhere for last week by my preparations, and it's another way to say fuck pictograms, but learn English. But he's right. If you learn English, you don't need pictograms anymore, and you can use it in the pub as well to meet some friends if you speak some English. Well, now we have the emoji. Maybe you can do it with that. But I like that. Anna, you have the last one, I think. We can go on, but I don't mind.
1 minute. Okay.
You can take a few minutes of it.
Well, we can be very, very quick. It's quite a nice one. Yeah,
Oops.
You do that one. Oh, it's quite a nice one. Damn it. So this is the idea that it's keeping a local flavour. So whenever you do design, and when Jock did design, he liked to have something that was unique and relevant to the area that he was designing for. And one thing, and that kind of works with what you were saying about the coat, the old smoking jacket as well. You know, it's relevant to the time and place, the context. And there's this nice quote that he said, "It is indeed a treacherous art lying in a no man's land between architecture, graphic design, and architecture and graphic design, apparently simple yet of bewildering possibilities." So there's this idea that he always had where he wanted to have something that was relevant to something going on in the area and something that had a little bit of texture. And we think that's a really, really lovely thing to bring in, and you've got a project that you're going to bring about architecture and wayfinding.
Yeah, you were the captain here. But what are we beheaded if we
You can do this one, and then we'll have a question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I have some about Aaron Foster. You won't miss. You will not miss that.
Okay. Cool. Sounds great.
But maybe I have to. This is about architecture, and Norman Foster is a big architect with a lousy wayfinding subject. So this is basically the problem. If architecture becomes too complex, the wayfinding becomes too difficult. So it's easy as that. So if you make architecture more speak for themselves, more natural, that you can see an entrance as an entrance, etc. You can see where the main hall is, you can see where the exit is. It makes such a difference. And if you make in a maximum, if you keep it simple, you have the wayfinding easy and less signs, and that's what we call natural wayfinding. And that's a very modern topic. Of course, it's a simplification, I know that, but it's basically related. Bad architecture, good, bad sign. That's another quotation. Okay.
Your microphone.
Sorry. I will show you. Wow, it's so nice. I show you some future thinkings of the airport design. They're wonderful. This is, you see, it's a kind of washing machine for aircraft. But you pass in and the aircraft go on, and then the next one. This one is your own gateway, beautiful with the first bridges, and you can see that in Futura and all that beautiful design. You can see it here. Okay.
The idea is to establish in London a station for the coordination of all types of transport: aerial, road, rail, water, and underground, all in one station. The airport would be elevated 120 feet above the ground, clear of all obstructions, and would consist of 4 intersecting runways, each 4 times the length of London Bridge and 3 times the width. After landing into the wind, the aeroplane would taxi round to the station to set down its passengers. It would then go on to a parking place or down the lifts into the hangars. At night, the illumination would be restricted to the runway which lies in the direction of wind. And the illumination would be controlled by the wind itself, following the wind round all the points of the compass, and so providing safe landing for all types of aeroplanes in any direction of wind. The estimated cost of the work is £5 million, over 4 million of which would be distributed directly and indirectly as wages. We would save no less than £2 million from the Dole Fund.
Great thinking. Okay, I have to hurry up. I was inspired by overview, and you see, you have stadiums or theaters, amphitheaters, and I said, we should build a new airports like this. And so now I'm stepping from a designer, graphic design information, to the architecture role. Not the architecture role itself, but about a building which is based on flow. So my idea is that if you, and I'm speaking almost like that man before me, I understand, but cost only £8 million. And so you enter the building in a high level, and you see from the beginning, you see the end of your process. That's the aircraft, and you go it's not big elevator, but just step by step. And for the reverse, you do the same downwards. And then I extended the whole thing to an airport. And what you don't see, the concourse should be about 5 kilometers long. So if you have to all the gates. But like in Kansa Airport, they did it, but then they made a T junction to it. But the basic thing is you just enter, you see the process, you're going down, down, down. Then you enter, you see, you pass the ticketing, the checking, security, passports. Then you go to the food area, it's on both sides. And you see already there's one moving walkway for each gate or set of gates. So you step in number 8, for example, and it brings you all the way. Of course, it has stops in between to change. And so that is my idea in response to architects. For heaven's sake, build an airport for you, for the passengers, and not for your for your own sake. And then comes Foster. I have to hurry. And they built in Berlin. They built a station, Hauptbahnhof, which is almost the same as the philosophy I showed you. You see the trains on the top level, on the down level. Oh yes, now here, this is it. How architects think. Here, architects dream about buildings without signs, but also without passengers. It's an artist's impression from Vienna Airport. Or even they dream about museums without art. It's from the book from the architect. He's so proud, but he doesn't want his the pictures, paintings. Yeah, this is Norman Foster Stansted Airport on day 1. That's the last day that you have seen it like this. And now, 20 years later or something, it looks like this. It's fully built with all kind of walls and stores and whatever. And this is how it looks. So you don't have any overview at all. And the problem is, and that's the last slide, I promise. Architects, they present their plans like this, the simplicity. So you can see the directors, the management of Stansted Airport applauding. Hooray, so simple can it be. But that's the problem. It's a simplicity which can never be true. There is never, first of all, if you have a square building and you're standing in the middle, you have no idea what is left, what's front, what's back, because it's all the same. And then of course you go left check-in because you're in England, so we're left, but it's all connected, so it's all one same area, so it's very confusing unless you build walls. So it is the simplicity what sells, but then the client or the users, they pay the lack of simplicity. They pay for the complexity which comes unavoidable, and that's the problem. That's why you have to go in discussion in a broader field. Think about the users, and then it will help. Then it will work, but not from any designer's point of view, not the architect's, not the graphic designer, but you have to think about the user point of view. Thank you.